This is going to be a film study focus on John Simpson, the Ravens' new left guard, perhaps a starter. They certainly allocated starter money for him, 3 years, I think $30 million, or maybe it's just above or below. I'm going to give you some plays here right off the bat and some summary thoughts at the end. Broke these down into run and pass plays. I posted it on Twitter as well as just, continuous files. Basically, I have two games that I thought might be complementary in terms of the production that the Jets had offensively. Week 4 against the Dolphins, which you see here, matched up against Zach Sealer often, and then also Week 8 against the Bengals, a game where they scored 23 points in the fourth quarter to win 39-38. So we'll get to the film. This is an inconsistent football player still, if you ask me. He's going to be the left guard. I'll generally have him spot shadowed in yellow. You get some good, some bad. Not as many instant losses as our other two guard starters from this past year. I feel like we're talking about a low bar for our expectation level. I find myself watching the film kind of changing my standards, if you will, lowering them to talk myself into John Simpson being something that he's not, at least on this film. Couple of things. He's got really wide hands on approach in the run game, and you kind of see it here. Whether he's dealing with a defensive tackle, nose tackle, or whether he's, comboing up to the second level, that's where I see those wide hands show up even more than they do here against Sealer. It's when he's trying to deal with someone out in space, doesn't seem to have the confidence in himself to be able to adequately strike a second-level defender, in between the shoulders, if you will, in their chest, without using his hands to rely on. I think Sealer kind of peels back inside here, makes the tackle. He's going to do a really nice job against this 3 technique for Miami, who's going to kind of step down or stunt slant across his face, if you will. One pattern that I feel like I've noticed is that Simpson seems to play better when he's moving to his right. When it's a run play that goes, off of his hip or off of his backside, as opposed to being expected to reach someone moving to his left. It almost kind of reminds me of Will Campbell. One of the things I talked about when he came out of the draft last year was that he had better steps to his right, moving to his right. Part of it was his stance than he did to his left. Nothing to do with his arm length, if you ask me. Simpson, the same kind of dynamic exists, except he's a guard. He almost seems to play better when he's moving in this direction. And, sometimes that's a hand thing, right-handed, left-handed, stronger steps to one side or the other. You can see the running back, in this case, I think it's Braylon Allen, goes directly off of his block for a 15-yard gain. I like this one. The awareness shows up. You can tell that there's awareness there in pass pro and in the run game of stuff like this. When a defensive tackle is kind of stunting or slanting to the inside, he does a pretty good job, I would say, oftentimes, adjusting his steps, taking short, choppy steps. You can see his feet kind of stutter or bang, bang on the ground. And then he recognizes he's able to peel to the inside. He's got a little bit of a help by the left tackle as far as what the left tackle is doing. My point is, there's some strengths and some weaknesses. It's not all bad. I found myself a couple of times saying, okay, we can work with this. Most of those occasions in the run game were when John Simpson was moving to his right. Facing Zach Sealer again is the three technique to his side. This is going to be a quarterback counter read or bash play again in that game against the Dolphins. I have 2 games here, like I said, Dolphins and then Bengals. The screen brightness is going to be radically different when we get to the Bengals film, so I'll try to warn you so that you don't get shocked by the system. But so he's, again, the left guard here. Usually on combo blocks, his hands are not as wide. In this case, they are. I think it's because he knows, where Sealer is, 3 technique, and he understands that the tackle's going to be stepping down and then trying to combo up because it's a gap scheme, right? Gap scheme meaning, everyone is really working down, even though it's not Simpson's path, and then the guard kick out and the tackle wrap, a gap scheme on QB counter, or what most people call bash. So you can see that left hand is a little bit wider, but I think there's a reason for that. It's a little bit anomalous on combo blocks. He doesn't seem to have as wide a hands on those combo blocks as we see here. I think it's because he's trying to he's trying to get Sealer this way. He's trying to clear a path for the gap scheme, as well as the tackle stepping down and then comboing up to the second level should kind of give Justin Fields an opportunity to run off of if he in fact does keep it like you see here. So it's not a bad rep in my opinion. It's just illustrative of his play style, which normally on combo blocks you see less of the wider hands. In this case, you do, but I think there's a reason for it, and there's a little bit of a optimism for me when the wide hands show up. And what I mean is, he's got awareness, and it seems to show up on run plays, but it doesn't seem to happen as often when it's a combo block. And to me, that means that there's some awareness or mental processing for him that he can or maybe should show up with wider hands than he does in his pass pro, where typically you don't see it as often. This will be the last one from the Dolphins game, and I think it shows some good things, but also the fact that you do not have a super athletic guard here in John Simpson that's going to be able to combo efficiently if an inside linebacker has a two-way go. That's a little bit of an oversimplification, but on this particular rep, he's got a very declared inside angle. So we're talking about this, shade nose tackle is the guy that he's going to combo and then move up to the second level to go get the backside inside linebacker. When he's got this angle to his right and it's somewhat declared for him, he can play more effectively, in my opinion, as opposed to combos that end up being on the front side where he's stepping out again. Kind of that Will Campbell comparison that I made last year, talking about being a better player, more powerful, precise steps to his right as opposed to his left. It doesn't mean that he never plays well against a three technique. It's just a pattern that I feel like I've seen in two games. And I think it's illustrative of a guy who has athletic deficiencies when he's getting to the second level. You can see he's sealed off here with the inside linebacker. In addition, the center, who I did not find his level of play to be of a high quality, to be honest with you. In fact, they had in this game some real false start or bad snap issues whereby 3 plays in a row, the left guard, Simpson, left tackle, and the center were just not on the same page as far as the snap count. So something really weird was going on, in my opinion. But in any case, moving in this direction to his right with a declared angle, he can get this done. Probably a poor description to say that, when the inside linebacker has a two-way go, you just don't seem to find this level of combo ability. It seems to be a whole lot better, in my opinion, comboing to his right when he's got a one technique or a 2-eye, meaning someone who's in the A-gap, as opposed to a 3 technique that he's got to step to his left initially. All right, so be forewarned, the brightness on screen is going to change drastically here when we get to the Bengals game. Another example, I think, that tells you he plays better moving to his right, especially laterally, than he does moving to his left. Now, one deficiency that's not going to show up here on this film that I show you is that when you've got a zone combination to the right away from John Simpson, one thing he does struggle with is oftentimes taking over or scooping a defensive tackle, if you will, that's lined up in the backside A-gap. That's not what happens here. I kind of had a little bit of a departure from the game flow. Again, I'm separating this into run plays and pass plays, so you can still look forward to, I think, 2 run plays here. Now, he does have a really nice ability to adjust during the play. His awareness is good. I talked about that. He's going to take over this nose tackle. It's a run concept away, so the fullback is leading the way for Breece Hall to attack to the right-hand side. So the nose tackle is somewhat visible for you guys. He's going to stunt or slant at John Simpson. And Simpson takes him over quite well. If you ask me, the center helps out a little bit by pushing with his left arm. I wonder if Simpson and the center had an idea that they might be getting this slant. It looks like, a base defensive structure for Cincinnati with the strong safety rolled up to one side. I'm talking about, it could be actually a corner. My apologies for that. I'm talking about that guy right there. But base defensive structure, 3 down linemen, 2 inside linebackers, 1 outside linebacker, and a second outside linebacker or edge defender, if you will, slanting this nose tackle across the center's face, and Simpson picks him up pretty well. Again, kind of talking about the same dynamic that I've mentioned multiple times. He seems to play better moving to his right than he does to his left. Is he an average guard? Is he an above average guard? It can vacillate between plays, to be honest with you. And I want to bring up a point that Danny made in our Ravens Discord. That's why I left that note on screen, that this could be a safety net type of signing. Basically, we didn't have the money, obviously, to retain Linderbaum. We pretty much knew at the time that things happened on Monday morning, we being at Ravens front office, or they, that they weren't going to be able to retain him. So this is a safety net, meaning We've traded away pick 14 for Max Crosby, and we don't know what guards will be available at 45. And so in the event that there's no guard there at 45 and there's some other player that we can't pass on, maybe it's a corner, maybe it's a wide receiver, maybe it's an inside linebacker or something like that. I have no idea. The point being that Danny made is that this is a floor, a safety net for a high floor, as opposed to Voorhees or some guard that we pick at 80 or beyond. You do see some good reps here in the run game that'll get you excited occasionally, but just not a dominant football player by any stretch, and someone who I think that if we're signing up for him to be our day one starter, no matter what, come hell or high water, whoever we draft at 45 or 80, then I think that's a really low bar in my opinion. All right, one more, and I will say this, I don't think that the Jets' operation is very good on offense. That was obvious, right? If he was to be paired in 2026 next to a Tyler Linderbaum and a Ronnie Stanley, then I think I would be happy with that, if that's what we ended up with, as long as there was some competition before he was just anointed as the starter. You do get a nice combo here between him and the center, who I don't really think super highly of. I don't know who that guy is and don't want to be derogatory necessarily, but I feel like I have to just talk about who he was playing next to. And if he was between Linderbaum and Stanley for 26, then I think I would trust his ability a little bit more. I know Ledford could be a factor here. There are some times where he's a little bit slow out of his stance. This is one of them, if you ask me. I'm talking about a tick slow compared to the other guys. The right guard, the left tackle even. Simpson is still down in his stance, but he does a nice job, if you ask me, of comboing to the backside inside linebacker. You still kind of see that outside arm, that left arm wrap. And sometimes what bothers me is if you've got a run play that's away from you for John Simpson, okay, who's located right there, and you're going to have an outside arm, you kind of do want it to be on this side, where the ball is going to be. So if you do hold at all, briefly, that you're holding where the linebacker would presumably avoid to or try to escape to. He's holding on both. He's holding here and here. I don't say hold. I'm not indicating that it should be called a hold. I just mean he's got outside hands, wide hands, completely after a combo block at the second level. You see this consistently, if you ask me, in the film. I would obviously suggest to you to go watch other people's film breakdowns of John Simpson. At this point, clearly Ravens content creators. One more play to illustrate something that's not a run nor a pass play. Well, technically it goes down as a pass play, and that's on screens. I don't think he provides much, if anything, out in space. I don't believe that he offers a whole lot on screens or reverses. I could be wrong. I hope to be proven wrong. They get lucky here, or it's a really good call by the Jets. This ends up being a screen to the left-hand side of us right now, of the Jets offense, and they catch the Bengals in this stunt or pick stunt between those two defensive tackles. And so what I mean is the defensive tackle on our right, he's going to go to pick John Simpson. And then they are trying to plan this defensive tackle to loop all the way around. And since there's a screen away from them, both of those defensive tackles, 97 setting the pick on Simpson, and the defensive tackle that lined up to his side, both end up with their backs turned and totally out of the play. The edge defender's out of the play as well. In my opinion, this is a nice call. This is a good setup, and Simpson just can't get it done. He's looking off screen to his left, and then he'll go to this safety or perhaps nickel DB, and just you get nothing. This is the type of thing that tells you, you're not talking about an athletic guy. I've watched a ton of draft film lately. It's more than just this play, in my opinion, not someone that can be relied upon out in space at all. You would expect high-level NFL, safeties, DBs, et cetera, even inside linebackers to be able to avoid blocks. We're not even close, right? We don't have the ability to get out in space and deal with linebackers or safeties at all on screens or somewhat anomalous plays, in my opinion. Let's move to some pass protection stuff where I think it's been well documented that, many people, Ravens fans and otherwise, feel like John Simpson is better in pass pro. I would have to agree after the two games that I watched. I also have a third one to go over. Clearly the Ravens win over the Jets late in the season in 2025. He does demonstrate awareness in pass pro. A little bit slow sometimes out of his stance. I mentioned that in the run section period. Again, he'll be spot shadowed in yellow. He's always going to be the left guard. In Baltimore, we would expect that he would be an upgrade over Voorhees, to be honest with you. Probably because of the pass pro. Additionally, larger frame, stronger, I think probably longer arms, a more square, solid style, if you ask me, in pass pro. Someone who I think has multiple moves, just like a pass rush guy has moves. He can usually utilize a jump set at times as a guard, and it's quite effective. I think I'll show you one example against the Bengals. But here you can see him kind of anchoring down, ending up with a long arm on that defensive tackle, really pushing him out of the way, trying to give Justin Fields a pocket to complete a pass. I think this one's late in the second quarter. Same game against the Dolphins in Week 4. In fact, I think this is the same drive. Late second quarter. I think this is a 3rd and 5. Nothing here as far as contact with another player that occurs directly after the snap. I should say the Mike linebacker is threatening a blitz. And again, the awareness, I think, kind of shows up. Now, at times for Baltimore in the last year or two, our guards have done things like this, and then a late blitz, through the gap that they kind of vacated, if you will, would give us trouble. We do get one example of that I'll show you here in a moment. But generally, these types of situations, he's got a help mentality, and he'll look for work. He'll find work. It oftentimes seemed to be helping the left guard. Excuse me, let me rephrase that. There were a lot of times where he seemed to be helping the left tackle when his rusher vacated. You will see there's 2 examples that I had on film of a defensive tackle kind of leaving John Simpson and crossing his face to go over and attack the center. And in fact, that ended up being a late or delayed loss for the center in those situations. But for the most part, I feel like you're getting positive outcomes when he utilizes or demonstrates that help mentality. 4-man rush setup here. And again, it's the same dynamic. You can see that he helps out the center for a moment post-snap with his inside arm, his right arm, and then he'll peel back to the outside. I feel like he's got a pretty good sense of when to leave. We're talking about pass pro specifically here. We already covered the run game. And again, I'm limiting my analysis to the 2 games that I was able to get to today. You can see he's already peeled over to help out the left tackle. After helping out the center, in my opinion, he's definitely better in pass pro. Is he above average? Is he good in pass pro? Relative to his film that I have seen against the run, I would say he's a pretty good pass protection guy compared to some of the other guards in the NFL, and even, at least 3 or 4 that I think are coming up in the NFL draft. I would say overall he's just above average. That help mentality shows up, one more time here, and it actually ends up a late quarterback hit or pressure by this defensive tackle who's lined up in the B gap just outside of John Simpson. He'll initially help out. Him and the center are both sliding or stepping to the left where the 3 technique is located, leaving the right tackle, who's got significant help here in the form of a tight end and a running back. So that's the reason why they're sliding to the left. I'm not sure that it necessarily is personnel related too often, but you can see John Simpson leaves at an appropriate time, but the coordination between him and the guard, the communication, I should say, just doesn't seem to be here. The center ends up, him and the center, doesn't seem to be here. The center actually kind of falls over late. Defensive tackle able to get a hit on Justin Fields. It forces an incompletion. We ran into these types of issues in Baltimore, particularly off the right side, where the lack of coordination between the right guard and center, or the right guard and tackle, meant that a player who adjusted his path or altered his pass rush path late ended up getting through. Those types of things, do I think they'd be a concern for us in Baltimore? I mean, maybe. I expect our offensive line coaching to be dramatically improved with Ledford compared to George Warhop. I mean, I've gone on record in the last year or so talking about that I felt like Warhop should have been gone after 2024. You're not going to go back and listen to my content after that loss to Buffalo in the playoffs, but I assure you I was adamant about it that changes needed to be made on the offensive line. I don't think that this will be as big of an issue, in my opinion, as long as there's coordination and communication, I should say, during the play from those guys, meaning the left guard and Ronnie Stanley, the left tackle, and whoever ends up playing center for us in 2026. Bengals film, I've only got 2 instances of pass plays here that I want to utilize. My film from this Bengals game is from the first 3 quarters only, number 1. Number 2, with Justin Fields playing quarterback, they were running the ball a lot in both of these games. The fourth quarter is dramatically different. I will do a standalone or separate video on Simpson in the fourth quarter because there's some pretty cool effort plays from him in those situations. A little slow getting out of his stance sometimes. This is not one of them because he's jumping the guy. And I actually like this pass set from him when he gets a 3 technique. And I talked about it in the first part of this video when he was able to step down, moving to his right, on a declared angle, if you will. His run blocking was better than we see with him stepping to his left. I kind of actually like his set here when he does this. The hand kind of widens up to the side where he's not expecting help from. I'm talking about the left hand, but it's a little bit lower, so there's a differential in the way that he's approaching this. He ends up planting the guy on the ground. He does have variable sets, in my opinion, for a guard. I think his pass protection confidence his confidence is different on pass pro plays. He seems to be a guy who is willing to be a little more aggressive in pass pro because he knows he's good at it. Out in space, when expected to combo up to second level defenders, there does seem to be some level of being unsure about himself and his ability to control a second level defender out in space. Final play, and his hands aren't as wide initially here. I think he has more confidence in his lower body strength and movement in pass pro than he does against the run. You can see how active the hands are. There's not this widening of the hands and the elbows, this flaring of the elbows so much that that actually ends up limiting your ability to move side to side. He is a little bit tighter in pass pro, in my opinion, a little bit more stabby, oftentimes getting his hands to the inside. You can see he actually kind of stands the guy up a little bit here. Number 90. I'm not even sure who that defensive tackle is for the Bengals. I should know because it's a division opponent. I'm not trying to convince you that the John Simpson signing is one that I'm super happy with, to be honest with you. I wonder and still kind of believe that it's a low bar to set for us. However, like Danny and others talked about in our Ravens Discord, if this is meant to be a safety net, if you will, that secures the offensive line floor, I guess, if you will, by getting John Simpson in the door. I think it's a $30 million deal over 3 years, or 30.2, 31.2, something like that, and no guaranteed money, which is great to hear. If we can find a Pregnon or a Besantis at guard at 45, let's say that the Arizona State tackle is there. I don't think that he's going to shift over to the left side and play left guard, but maybe Emory Jones could. I would wholeheartedly support drafting Max at 45 and possibly looking at him kicking inside and creating some real competition. We haven't had competition at guard, really. I mean, they talked about a competition last year for Voorhees. That didn't work out, obviously. I'm not a huge fan of this signing unless it's part of a global attempt or comprehensive attempt to address the position or address the interior offensive line. In and of itself, on the same day that we lose Tyler Linderbaum, it certainly is inflammatory and something that makes us all get a little bit upset and frustrated. And you can't blame Ravens fans for being so. I'm one of them, number one, obviously. And I had the same reaction. To know that we've had offensive line issues the last 2 off seasons. You can say what you want about offensive production in 2024. Of course, it was historic. We had tremendous inconsistency along the offensive line. Whether you're talking about left guard with Macari or right guard with Filele, it was my opinion at the time, it still is, that the offensive line position should have been addressed after 2024. I mean, both guard spots more aggressively. We did not do so. This offseason, we all hoped that we would get that course correction or market correction, if you will, however you want to describe it, because of a new offensive coordinator, Doyle, and a new offensive line guy in Ledford. This signing by itself isn't one that inspires confidence. I offer to you that I'm willing to accept right now, as it stands in early March, that this is just part of a process of trying to address it maybe one more time in free agency, or maybe 2 players selected in the draft provide some real competition, which we have not had in the last couple of years from an interior offensive line standpoint. That'll be my analysis for these 2 games, and I'll focus a second or separate video, I should say, on John Simpson against the Ravens late in the season in 2025, and also focus on the fourth quarter comeback that the Jets had against the Bengals to win that game 39-38. Appreciate you guys' time, man. Let me know what you think of the video in the comment section and the plays that I used to kind of illustrate my thoughts as it relates to John Simpson. And if you think other Ravens fans would enjoy this film study look at the Ravens free agent acquisition, their latest one, along with Tyler Huntley, then please consider grabbing a link to this video, sharing it out on social media to help this content get more reach.